most of our digital training are not synchronous. This aspect, it is very important because we know that many African countries have some issue regarding the internet connectivity. And our process is to share one module per week. One module, it means that the commented PowerPoint, the presentation, and the narrative of all the contents that is relevant for this module are shared, and for 1 week. And then participants have to connect at least once to download the contents in 1 week, and the second time maybe to take the assessment of the module. And we keep in touch with the participant by the forum of discussion to allow them in the interaction part for the courses. For example, a training with 4 modules will be done in 5 weeks, and the last week allow the participant to finish all the assessment and also to give the feedback from these activities. And we interact with participants, as said, with forum to allow participants to ask a question, to share their experience, and also to give the feedback from these activities for allowing us to improve our process or to improve the content of the courses. And in addition to the course with course director and tutor with interaction, there are also self-paced courses in which the participants progress on their own speed, and the content available with video and the presentation as presented by also this kind of facts. And in our orientation, the new normal will be, if possible, to connect the face-to-face to the digital training for having interactions that can improve better the knowledge sharing. It means that when COVID, we expect that soon COVID will go out from all the countries of the world, and we expect that we will maybe take what is very good from our experience in this period and to combine it to the face-to-face method and to have hybrid training activities. First part will be the face-to-face to share all the content or all the knowledge, and for the practical aspect to try to have the first part will be the digital, and the second part will be to have the face-to-face one to allow participants and course director and all the experts to share experience and also to interact. And it's the first part of my communication, and I am going to jump on the second part related to exactly the work of NSO response team, with particular emphasis on working on sustainable training program. Now for this aspect, many will agree that there is an overall need to rethink statistical training with the aim of more demand-driven approach and increased coordination in training offer. The global network, GIST, the global network of Institute for Statistical Training, and particularly the task team I'm leading on addressing NSO demand, has a recent month had a focus on how strengthen statistical training program at national level. And for this, 2 consultants were hired who conduct interviews with many countries and regional training centers with the objective of investigating how training is organized at NSO level. And yeah, I think I will finish soon. And so the report resulting from this interview showed a wide variety of practice and experience. Based on these, 4 recommendations were made for how statistical training at national level and overall coordination of statistical training can be strengthened. And the first one of the recommendation is establishment of a repository of training materials and tools And in this fact, what Elena presents is very relevant, and we have this kind of how can I say that? The kind of this link to access to a repository of training. The second recommendation is standard set of courses to give NSO a starting point to identify training needs and develop a training program. The third recommendation is develop international recommendation for establishing a growing and sustainable training program, NSO. And the fourth is strengthening and clarification of the role and regional of international organization in building country level training program. The report can be found on the homepage of GIST, and we will share after the presentation the homepage of GIST. As follow-up of this recommendation, two workshops were held to discuss on the recommendation with partners, and the workshop including more than 25 participants of NSO, Regional Training Center International Organization. From the discussion, a draft set of recommendations for a standard set of NSO to cover has been drafted. This can grouped into four sections. And for the standard curriculum, we have four sections. The first one is hard statistical skills to be included in the curriculum. The second one, it is soft skills that is essential for the NSO. The third one, it is a curriculum recommendation by career stage of NSO staff. And the fourth and last one, it is the role of regional and international organization on helping NSO to develop standard curriculum. The standard set of course in combination with training needs, self-assessment can be the starting point of the NSO to define which training needs staff and potentially to wider statistical system. With this in hand, it can take hard to meet these needs using internal training resources, course online, and offering from regional international partners to fill the training needs. A training would then to a larger existing demand rather than supply driven. This is very important. This remark means that we have to better organize the training as a demand driven. As the consultant highlight, however, for this change toward a more demand driven new normal in statistical training to take place, and the management of the NSO need to have an ownership to this approach and devote time and resource to it, and partners need to have a more flexible approach responding to the need identified. And in this fact, I think we need a very strong leadership for the management of the NSO to allow to have fund for organizing these training activities. And GIST will publish more of this work and finding in the next month, and this material will hopefully be useful to the continued discussion and will toward a new normal for statistical training. And in this fact, we thank you very much for joining us on this webinar, and we'll be very happy to interact with you on the important section. Thank you, Stephen. Over to you.
Great, thanks, Mamadou. So moving swiftly on to our next speaker, I'd like to introduce Miss Bianca Walsh. Bianca is the Coordinator of Training and Development at the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, IBGE. She leads a multidisciplinary staff to assess IBGE's capacity building needs and to develop and provide solutions for them. She's worked as a content developer and a training and training of trainers project in Brazil. So Bianca, over to you.
Thank you. Let's just wait for the, yeah, okay. My warm greetings to everyone. I would like to share some thoughts on our training experiences and some thoughts on the new normal, especially considering Brazil's NSO IBGE. I'll structure my talk talking first about the new experiences and then reviewing and validating old ones. Okay, next slide, please. This is a picture of a synchronous session for the census training. We had just 4 months to develop that. We never dealt with online, yes, but not with synchronous learning. So that was the first time. Next slide, please. And I would like to highlight some advantages and requirements and challenges for that new experience. The advantages Elena already talked about. We have a wider access to all the national state units in Brazil. IBGE has 27 units spread all over the 27 states in Brazil. We have lower costs with travels and accommodations, but we need to, I would like to call attention to the need to study very well and deeply the tools you're going to use, we're going to use in this kind of experience. For the census training, we used Moodle, which is our LMS. We already worked with that for a while, integrated with Microsoft Teams for the synchronous sessions. As challenges, everybody's in home office at IBGE right now, so we have a variant internet access that disturbed a little the experience, but nothing serious. Still, it's a challenge to be considered. But I highlight again here the need to design a student-centered experience for remote settings. If this is true for face-to-face learning, it's even more true for, we notice that from the empirical experience, because we see people get tired faster, get bored faster. I have some hypotheses about that. I think we lack contextual clues we would have in face-to-face. We have more cognitive load in processing, also not only the learning experience, but also how you manifest yourself using virtual tools. So I think all that contributes to these load we feel with the e-learning experience. So we need really to study that to think, for example, of changing, transposing one face-to-face experience into a virtual remote class, for example. Next slide, please. Talking about the experiences we already had, here you see the picture of an HTML-based course we developed for the National Household Survey, Special Edition COVID we had last year. We developed this course in less than 2 months. You can see here, next slide please, the use of different media, especially the use of videos, and that showed very important because our surveys, our interviews, they use mobile devices to ask questions and register the results. So to explain that using just texts in a self-paced, for example, is very hard. So we combine texts and several media elements, including videos, in a tutorial fashion, in bringing simulations of interviews, and that helped very much. Students welcomed that format a lot. And so this is one thing. Another thing about working with self-paced is that we notice we can enrich the experience combining self-paced, blending self-paced. For example, for short courses we had the risk management course with 30 students. We combined a self-paced course, also HTML, including, I guess, 1 or 2 videos, not so many videos as in the trainings, with synchronous sessions to clarify doubts, to show how the assignment or the project was. So that was very successful too. We'll keep that for the new normal to enhance our experience with learning experience with self-paced, but also for big courses. I mean, for many people, we are very used to offering self-paced for like 2,000 people, 3,000 people. This course I have just talked about, the PNAD the National Household Survey training for special edition COVID, we blended the self-paced e-learning with forums in Moodle, which brought life to a community of practice that came into existence, and they could foster and continue learning. Next slide, please. Well, this is about the backstage. We were always very concerned about the quality of our work, our backstage work. I mean, what comes before the offerings? Yes, how do we develop experiences, etc. But that was crucial for the home office experience. So in the beginning of the home office, a while before we knew that we would work hard and a lot, we organized ourselves using a tool, a specific tool for that, but also we built a governance of use of this tool and also of behavior in the remote world. So next slide, please. That allowed us to be bigger as a project team, I mean, to develop solutions, etc., including people from the state units of Brazil, yeah. And also we could build our communication possibilities. There was a greater agility on that. So for me, that was a key ingredient in the recipe of developing things overnight and effective ways. Okay, next slide, please. As for validating previous initiatives, before the pandemic, we already had an initiative of offering that was a training for trainers project. It was offering a blended course mixing self-paced with face-to-face learning for didactics for our trainers at IBGE. So we continued that project. It showed a success and it's still going on. I think the last offer was in April. We continued that, preparing in that, please next slide, in preparing that topic and building teaching skills. But we also saw that, for example, for the census training, we had also to develop an overnight a project to train for the use of remote tools and for the behavior in remote settings. Because although we have experienced trainers, they are experienced in face-to-face settings. So there is a huge difference when we come to remote settings. And we had, I mean, experience proved that it would be necessary to train them in those in that setting. Next slide, please. Another initiative we had before, and that was validated, we always tried to work with learning trails. And those learning trails can use, and sometimes they completely use, which is the case here I present, external resources. We don't have all the courses and all the resources internally at IBGE, of course not. I think it's the same thing for most of you. So we have to access and combine from different sources. The one you are looking at right now was the result of a special request from our old president. She asked us to offer capacity building opportunities in the management area. So we developed 5 learning trails. Okay, all of them, each block here is related to a course, a specific course that was external, so they could do that trail and learn. Next slide, please, and build capacities in management. And in this idea here, we bring the importance of the different sources, including the one Elena presented, UNSDG Learn, which IBGE last year in our last needs assessment for the whole institution, we already used UNSDG Learn to recommend solutions to meet capacity building or training needs. Next slide. Okay, I would like to finish saying that I believe now for the new normal, we need to evaluate all those experiences and resources we experimented with, we reviewed, adjusted, or validated, conceptualize, systematize, and try to integrate those learning possibilities to see when we can use them, the best moment for a specific need, and also increase access to learning opportunities, but still in an effective, quality way. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Bianca. So now, everybody, last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Zita Villajuan Albecia, who's the Professor of Statistics at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. As part of her extensive work, she serves as the chair of the UNCTAD Network for the Coordination of Statistical Training in the Asia-Pacific region. She's also served as the first executive director of the Philippine Statistical Research and Training Program. So Zita, it's our great pleasure to hear what you have to say.
Yes, a warm welcome to everyone. My experience as a professor of statistics and also as a former executive director of a national statistical training, I would like to share to you what will be my views on what will be the new normal for statistical training. Now, as we know, as I've said, we know that there are two forms of statistical training. The formal one, which is usually presented by the university, as the university is mandated to give or to offer a degree program in statistics. And we have what we refer to as the informal training, which is usually given by statistical training unit of the country. Now, next slide, please. National Statistical Training Unit may be usually is an entity and work closely with the country's National Statistics Office or the NSO. However, there are some countries where the Statistical Training Unit is part of their NSO, like that of Indonesia. The NSO of Indonesia offers a bachelor's degree program in statistics and produces graduates who are eventually absorbed in the country's statistical labor force. Whether part or a separate entity, most of the statistical training units have the mandate to provide statistical training to the members of the statistical system, specifically the government offices. The Statistical Training Unit develops, retools, and enriches the skill of the official statisticians in data collection, data processing, data analysis, data archiving, and even in data visualization. Next slide, please. And before the pandemic, a statistical training is conducted, as we all know, in a face-to-face mode, in a training venue that is said to be conducive for learning, and this is usually away from participants' usual place of work. And this is done to have an environment that allows trainees to concentrate on their learnings, to have a maximum gain from the training. But such training usually costs a lot on the sides of the funding providers, as well as to the home office of the participants. Cost of travel, food, and accommodation usually take the biggest chunks of the total training budget. Next slide, please. But this is no longer true at the present conduct of statistical training, since nowadays trainings are conducted on a remote mode through an online delivery. There's no need for training venues as we do what we refer to as a training from home or the TFH. Hence, no travel costs as well as food and accommodation expenses for the participants. We observe a big cut in the training costs because of this. But but with the lower costs, we also have experienced some learning losses. And these learning losses is due to the absence of interactions with the with the trainer, as well as not to mention the learning that you can get from social interaction experiences among participants, um, and that is also considered as a learning loss. Now, combining the good things of training conducted before the pandemic and the benefits we are now experiencing at present, and are what we should have for trainings in the new normal scenario. A blended mode of delivery is more appropriate to apply, as what we have already heard before. Training course design could be done creatively to incorporate more participation and interaction between the training facilities and the trainees. Training facilitators, I should say, and the trainees. Training in the new normal is still to be done remotely to maximize the benefits of training cost cuts, but must be in a blended mode to minimize the loss brought about by the absence of personal social interaction among the players in a training session. So to achieve maximum gain and minimum loss, we have now this on the slide. A statistical training unit operating in a new normal scenario must invest in the following, must invest to have the following. We need easy to use and effective learning management system, or what we refer to as an LMS. A Moodle is one of them. We need to have a well-designed training course packs for blended mode of delivery. The training course packs includes all the course guides, course requirement, the training course requirements, and even the videos, webinars that will be included in the delivery of the training. We need experienced training facilitators and staff in the conduct of the training using the LMS. But on the sideline, we also need the efficient management system for administrative concerns like coordination of the participants, among the participants, registration, logistic, as well as the financial aspect. So if I will try to summarize, next slide, please, what we have learned in this one, if there's anything good or positive that the pandemic has brought us, it is to think of a way to have a better and more significant statistical training. Thanks for your time listening.
Great, thank you, Zita. Now, everybody, I think some people have started, but this is where the audience participation bit gets a bit more active. So if anybody wants to post questions in the chat, now is a good time to start thinking about it. But while you do, some people had posted questions in advance. But just before that, I just want to reflect on something I'd said at the start. I mean, one of the advantages of online training is the reach. And I'm probably going to regret doing this, but when I look through the chat, from what I can see, I'll probably miss somebody, but there's at least 41 countries represented today. We have Bulgaria, Brazil, Mexico, Norway, Burundi, Bahamas, Argentina, Canada, Italy, the United Kingdom, Belarus, Mali, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Nepal, Ireland, Albania, the United States, India, Australia, Colombia, Saudi Arabia, Mozambique, Thailand, Curacao, Morocco, Bahrain, Ethiopia, Hungary, Uruguay, Ecuador, the Kyrgyz Republic, Bangladesh, Lebanon, Malawi, Malaysia, South Africa. And we also have a lot of agencies and different societies represented. I mean, it's incredible when you think how many people from different time zones have dialed in to join us. And all at no cost, really. So, and sorry, and Lithuania snuck in at the very end. So welcome. So, I mean, that in itself is fantastic, and that's one of the huge advantages, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. And Ecuador as well. So yeah, okay, everybody's getting in now. So let's start with some of the questions that were prepared. So one obvious question, and I think Elena and Mamadou have already alluded to this, but I just want to come back to it, which was the issues around internet connectivity. How do we make sure that internet connectivity doesn't prohibit people from availing of online training? And as a supplementary to that, in the chat, Tiana asks as well about software installation. So how do we avoid the challenges of somebody maybe in an isolated area and is having problems downloading the platform or the software or just getting access to the training? Is there any simple way around this? So let me start with Elena, seeing as she mentioned this coming out of her research.
Thank you, Steve. So I think there are two types of learning between which we need to distinguish in this context. First, there are online workshops. And here indeed, in some contexts and for some things, face-to-face workshops cannot be replaced because of the low connectivity environment in some of the regions. What we've also seen that for the global events, some regions, because of the time zone, get regularly excluded. Like, for example, that's often the case of the Pacific Islands. So it is problematic. On the other hand, when we talk about e-learning, self-paced e-learning, there are some solutions. And what we've been doing now for quite a while already is that we would have courses in two formats. One more interactive that requires a higher bandwidth, internet bandwidth, and another one which would be simpler, like PDF versions of the manuals or lessons, etc. That would also be provided in case some of the participants are really struggling in watching the videos or opening more complex software. So this is how we've been addressing this. But I think in terms of online workshops, for now, as the internet gets developed, there is no way around. It's just some of the events need to take place whenever possible and whenever the learning objectives and methodology require face-to-face.
Sorry, I'm unmuted. Mamadou, I just wondering, would you like to comment as well, seeing you had highlighted the issue as well?
Yes. I fully agree with Elena's comment, and we have a little bit the same process, and so we have two kind of courses. As she said, self-paced courses, and the second one, it is not self-paced but asynchronous courses, but with the content shared week per week. And as it has been said in my presentation, we let the participant downloading the content as you want. But if you have some difficulties, we have some, how can I say that, some indication to allow him or her contacting IDEP IT person to help him downloading the content. And elsewhere, we can give him the indication to be connected in the self-paced platform to download the content. And so we know that this fact is very, very important. The connectivity, it is a very important issue in many African countries, and it's why we process in this orientation to let more time to the participant to download the content. It means that if it is not doable one day, maybe he can or her can do it the day coming, and we let him 1 week to be able to download the content. and it is our process, and it is what we do for avoiding this case of issue. Okay, over to you.
Great, thanks, Mamadou. Now, before I ask the next question, just a quick greetings to Chile, to Spain, to Jordan, to Dominican Republic, to Tajikistan, Venezuela, and Hong Kong, who felt left out. So apologies to anybody else that I've missed. So if we turn back, I guess the big question is looking back. So maybe if I start with Bianca. Bianca, if we look at what we've learned from the last year and a half, and then we think about moving forward, Karina has asked, what's the best balance do we think looking forward between face-to-face and online? It's like, what will the new normal look like, do we think?
I think we need to consider always the learning objective for each situation to think what better fits. If we're the advantage of okay, as you already said, the advantage of doing everything in a remote fashion is that you can put people from all over together. Yeah. So many things we are still experimenting. We believed that we couldn't do in virtual setting, but it showed the contrary. Yeah? We can do in the face-to-face, but also in the virtual setting. I still believe that, for example, we have a course, a very long course here in our institute, which deals with training for a real survey, yes, a real sample survey, yes. So students really get to interview people in a specific area here in Rio de Janeiro, sometimes next to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So there is an application that requires face-to-face encounters, etc., to discuss, not to discuss, but to apply the knowledge, etc. So in this case, it's very difficult not to think of blended. For example, that was completely face-to-face. Now I think of that again, of that course as a blended solution. We can, for example, meet to project the experience online in a remote setting. We can have maybe some self-paced in a flipped classroom logics, but still we have to apply the knowledge in practice. So I think it depends. The best balance always has to consider what is the learning objective. What are the gains, okay, of putting more people that geographically are geographically separate together, yes? So it's always a very ad hoc decision, yes? You have to see and really study the target audience, the learning need, and be experimenting and studying about new possibilities in the virtual setting, because sometimes we are very prejudicial, yeah, because we learned in physical e-learning settings. Yes. Now we are finding out several possibilities as we are doing here. Yes, we are putting many people together. So that's what I would like to contribute by saying. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Bianca. Can I put the same question to you, Zia?
Please, you called me, Sita?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry to hear. Yeah, I agree with Bianca regarding the we have to be specific. We have to think of the training objectives to be able to design a particular training course in a blended mode. But generally, now we have experienced the benefits of a virtual on our online training. We'd want to put the goods of the previous way we do it and the what we have learned or the experiences that we got during the pandemic. So we are want to get a somewhat a blended mode, as I have said. Maybe synchronous lecture will be done especially those with great access or have less challenging internet connection, but maybe asynchronous type of learning can be or teaching can be made for those who are having difficulty, like what Bianca said, that's you have those modules, you have those handouts, and also we also have in the university we did that survey course, as you have described it. We also have videos, no? We try to um, especially during this pandemic, the teacher asked them to practice or to put in practice what they have learned by interviewing, for example, get a family member and suppose do a role playing as if one is interviewing another adult, and then put some questions, and the student is required to video this one and submit it as a requirement. And then after that, the whole class will meet synchronously and evaluate and critique what happened to that video. So in this way, there is what we refer to as an active participation. And you all can do this when you say you do it in a blended mode. But again, we must prepare. We must design the training course before we implement it, because there are many aspects that we have to consider in a training course. We have to think of every detail before doing it. No, so I think great preparation is what we really need for that particular to be able to implement a new mode, maybe a new modal form of your training. Is that all right?
Great, thank you. So there's a few questions coming up. So maybe for Elena and Bianca, if we can turn our attention maybe to how to assess the quality of online training so that we know that it's working. Do you have any comments on that, Elena, from your experience?
Yes, so in a sense, we've been evaluating online trainings, meaning online workshops, similar to face-to-face workshops. It's just we had some additional questions. And in fact, it was easier to do it than in the face-to-face setting, because it's easier to administer the questionnaire. For example, when we do what we call a level 2 evaluation, that is, we measure the knowledge and skills before the training and then after objectively. It can be a test, for example, that the participants take before and after. And then we can actually see if there had been an increase in knowledge and skills. And based on the questions that you designed, you can also see, for example, which parts of the training were explained well and designed well. And maybe those where participants actually didn't get it as well as you were hoping, and it means you need to improve that part. And then it's also, there are quite a few points that are also very similar for the e-learning. So this is the self-paced learning, where basically you access lessons in an authoring tools and specialized software, and then you follow it on your own. And then, of course, in addition to level 2, we always do level 1 evaluation. That is the participants' perception of the event. So what is their feeling? Did they increase their confidence? Do they think they achieved the learning objectives? Were the learning objectives relevant? And also what they think needs to be changed for the next run of the training. And then finally, also what you can do, and that's something that we do as part of the program activities, you can also do an evaluation later on the application of the knowledge and skills acquired. Typically, you do it several months down the road, where you can interview some of the participants or run an online questionnaire, and then try to understand what they had been applying or not from what they were supposed to learn from their training.
Okay, thanks, Elena. I wonder, has anybody considered as well surveying their employers to see have they identified an increase in skills? rather than the perception of the employees themselves. So Bianca, if I can turn to you, but in the chat, there's some interesting nuances around this question of quality. One is from Mumid, who identifies maybe the perception that online training isn't as good as face-to-face, if I understand the comment correctly. And then Monica also asks about is there any way to kind of better embed online training with the kind of the day-to-day, because I mean most of our training is kind of on the job. So how do we blend kind of online training with on the job training? Is there some way to do that? So maybe if you can take all of that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think that's only possible. Well, that reminds me of what I presented in when we talked about the backstage of the learning development, learning solution development. That's only possible if you are pretty well organized to manage teams and to work in a remote way. Yes, because if you still have difficulties to manage, and that's what happened to my team, because we were complete and we are still in home office, so we had to work in a remote mode. So we found that tool, in this case was Microsoft Teams. We built governance of use with agreements, okay, on how to behave, what to use, where you're going to find information. So we organized our projects internally. Apart from learning, we had to organize ourselves to start developing learning solutions. So I think the challenge comes with the challenge of adapting to a home office. So it's more a challenge of how to manage, how to integrate, and how to continue working, or even more effectively. I have to admit that my whole team thinks the same way. If we go back to physical premises again, yes, we will do, I guess. I don't know if we're going to do this completely, but if we do, we'll continue working the same way, using our governance of use in Microsoft Teams, allowing for people from all over Brazil communicating with us practically online, in the way we organize our projects, etc. So it showed more effective and more agile in terms of communication. So I guess we can only think of blending, yes, the performance world, yes, with the learning world, if we really organize ourselves in the performance, yes. Maybe that's a challenge too. I mean, to teach, we did this pretty well, I guess, my team. We can, I have talked to some people external to my department, talking about this, how we organized ourselves, etc., sharing some thoughts, and people were forced to, yes, to do that. So maybe we could think of learning or development in that area, how to work in home office, how to work just virtually. Yes. So I don't know if I was able to.
Yeah, no, super.
Answer your challenging question.
We're getting a lot of interesting questions coming in. So there's one I think I'll pose to Zita. So Ashvin from Portugal, or I think Iran originally, asks whether online training is really low cost, that there's an awful lot of infrastructure, time and effort has to be put in on the delivery side. So it may be free to the participants, but not on the other side. So he's wondering, is it really low cost?
Initially, it might not be, because you have to invest. That's one of the requirements that I have. We have to invest something, no? And then in the long run, it will be a sign that will come up with a little bit more benefit, cost benefit, no? Cost beneficial to especially to the training providers, no? As mentioned earlier, there must we must invest on the infra that is needed to have an effective learning environment. Now, maybe we are still used to the online training courses that we have before, even before the pandemic, wherein we have this PowerPoint presented, and then we just simply look at the training modules, and then we answer questions, and then we do it our own pace, and then we continue, and then we move. But now with this with the new scenario, we have to be organized, as what Bianca said. There must be a learning management system, and that system tells us schedule our activities at the very start. That is what we are meant when we try to organize. Even before the start of the training course, we have already know what will happen during the training period. When do we going to give the exercise, or when do we give the activity? When will the participant return the activity? If there is some participants who are slow, a little bit slow in answering the exercises, then how do we move in as a training facilitator? How do we schedule the consultation? Especially, we have different time periods, right? And it's very difficult, really, when we do the online consultation with our participants. Sometimes you're sleeping, and they will try to wake you up and for a particular question. But again, that can be answered through a learning management system, which is not only the facilitators or the the trainees that must know how to do, how to be part of the system, but especially the trainers and the training staff. No, it's not only the facilitator, but your support staff must also be well trained on how to use the system. And that is a system that is for the delivery, no? But I'm also mentioned earlier that there must be another system, and that is the system of administrative concern. That is the coordination, the registration, the logistics of the implementation of the training. So it really, under as the initial, it will be, there must be some investment. But in the long run, I think the benefit will overcome the cost. Did I answer your question?
Yes, very good.
Okay,
Thanks, Sita.
thank you.
So, Mamadou, I have a question here, two questions in a way. One is, people are wondering, can we extend online training to usefully and efficiently train enumerators? So the people who are conducting the actual surveys, so instead of the office staff, can we extend the reach of online training to train field force? And I guess combined with that, David Stern has also asked, back to the internet connectivity issue, and maybe this would come in if we're trying to train field staff. Is there some way that we can use local hubs to facilitate training? So rather than everybody having to connect individually, can we bring people together and deliver training remotely? So maybe you'd like to touch on those questions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think I want to highlight that Zita had already said, but coming back to this fact, I think that it's very relevant to say it again. We are saying that the digital training are low cost, but I think we need first to have a very big investment in terms of material at the beginning. And also, something very important, it is the preparation before the courses, and at least the emitters to avoid those who will disconnect in the process. I think it is very, very important, the M&E process, to follow up during the courses, and so to have the evaluation maybe 6 months later or one month later. And I think this process can help us improving in terms of objective, how we achieve our goal for this training activities or not. And regarding the result, we will correct or we will improve the process, or will improve the content also. And coming back to your question, Steve, I think that for the connectivity issues and for the how can I say that also, the first question was about the sorry, can you remember? Forgetting.
Yeah, it was how
yes.
to extend online training to train field force.
Yeah,
and then
yes,
maybe
okay.
using local hubs if there's internet connections.
Okay. Yeah, yes. Sorry. I want to give some example for digital training regarding this aspect. And sometimes we have some requests of member states, and for giving answer to some tailor-made courses, and the tailor-made courses, digital tailor-made courses, and we better try to organize the training of trainers in digital, and we need maybe a very good level of these trainers to be trained, and after that, this can help us to achieve the deep level in local communities in terms of training. And this aspect, it is I think very important, as if we have some connectivity issues in terms of regional repartition. We have regarding IDEP aspect, we have some regional offices, and when we organize training on African CFTA, and we allow participants to go to the SRO West Africa to connect there, to download the content of the courses, and also to have the content and to use it. And I think our regional representation help us sometimes solving this kind of issue. But we know that the connectivity issue is something very challenging, but we try to have to do our best for solving this problem.
Okay, thanks, Mamadou. Now, would you believe we are out of time already? Apologies to everybody that I didn't get to. So many interesting questions in the chat that I'd love to have got to, but we've run out of time. So I'd just like to thank everybody, in particular our speakers. If you can put your thumbs up for Elena, for Mamadou, for Bianca, and for Zita. I think they've really presented some interesting stuff. Thanks again to the United Nations Statistics Division for hosting. Thanks to Faryal and Viveka for organizing this. As you can see, this is a really interesting topic, and I think it's one that requires more time and more discussion. I'd like to wrap up just with one final comment that was in the chat, which comes from Kathy, who basically says that the online has to be the new normal in the context of climate change. And I think she's probably right. So with that, I'd just like to thank everybody for taking the time to dial in. I hope you're all staying safe, stay well, and we'll see you again somewhere on the next online platform. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon.